Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Asian Blokes Podcast, a podcast where we talk about Asian pop culture, films, TV shows, music, anime, comic books, food, video games, whatever feeling at the time, really. My name is Dan with a H, and with me, as always, is my co-host Tavi. Hi, Tavi.
Hi, Dan. Today's episode, we are going to review the new Mamoru Hosoda film, Belle. It's an animated movie. It's about Chizu, who is a country girl who is introverted, but she has an online persona in this virtual world called You, and her virtual persona is named Belle. In the virtual world, she is a popular singer, and she comes across this other mysterious individual known as the Dragon. So it's kind of like a contemporary modern take on Beauty and the Beast. Out of the bat, I really like this movie a lot. I saw it twice in the cinema.
It is in the cinemas at the time of recording. I don't think it's in all cinemas where I am, so it might be a bit harder to find than other more mainstream films. I'm
honestly quite surprised at how many cinemas are showing this movie, because I watched this at a pretty local cinema, not very far from where I live. Usually, if I watch these kind of films, I have to go to Cinema Nova, which is in Carlton, so that's more towards the city.
Hipsters cinema.
Yeah. But no, this movie was showing, just basically 10-15 minute drive.
I think Australia is getting better at screening these types of films as anime becomes more popular. Like I feel like the Demon Slayer movie was shown pretty widely in Australia.
I have to say, Australians seem to embrace a lot of these international films quite well. We have SBS on demand. Risky has pointed to quite a few gems that are like kind of hidden in there, and I've watched. So there's definitely a good reception here, and we often get the films pretty early. I think in the States, they usually have to dub it first. Like, I know that we got Parasite way before many other countries got that film because we didn't wait for the dub. We only had the subtitled version only.
Right, okay.
So we were one of the first countries to get Parasite. Unfortunately, we got Belle pretty late.
Oh, did we?
It was meant to screen at MIF until MIF was cancelled. So that's Melbourne International Film Festival. Because, this movie was really well received at Cannes. I'm not sure if it won anything, but I remember reading reviews and articles talking about how it received like a 10-minute, 15-minute standing ovation at its screening. This movie did really well with critics. And I think Mamoru Hosoda fans will really like this movie. I'm a big fan of his stuff. I've seen pretty much all of his works. He did The Girl That Leapt Through Time. He did Wolf Children, The Boy and the Beast. And Belle is pretty much a follow-up, I think, to Summer Wars.
Yeah, pretty similar to Summer Wars in terms of the narrative structure.
And just the elements as well, like the virtual world. I've noticed Mamoru Hosoda loves anthropomorphic creatures. He loves whales. And
unlike other Japanese.
Unlike other Japanese people.
I guess if you are able to catch this in cinemas, do so, because I feel like it's a very good cinema movie. But if you have to wait to catch it on streaming or whatnot, the Japanese title is Ryo to Sobakasu no Hime. So just keep an eye out for it, because it's worth a watch, I think. And as usual, Tavi and I will be talking about it without spoiling it, and we'll give you guys some fair warning if we do start dropping spoilers. But check it out.
I think this movie is an improvement upon Summer Wars. I watched Summer Wars for the first time a few months ago, and while I did like the animation, I felt the narrative was a bit uneven and a bit all over the place. So I didn't actually like Summer Wars that much.
Doesn't have the songs either. Doesn't have the banger tracks.
I think the issue I had with Summer Wars is like an unactive protagonist.
Who's the protagonist in Summer Wars?
I honestly don't remember.
It's the kid that's still
smart,
playing the game,
the
right?
Smart kid, yeah. But no, there's like two smart kids. You're introduced to the one who's like really good at math, and then you're introduced to the kid who's like has the slick rabbit avatar.
Right.
But it kind of ends up being about that kid. Again, it's kind of uneven, and the protagonist that they set up is sidelined and he doesn't really do anything. Whereas in Belle, you have a much more relatable character, Chizu, who's introverted for reasons of trauma, has issues, with self-confidence. And I can kind of see myself in that. Like when I was, I guess, in high school growing up, I was a pretty introverted, shy kid until I discovered alcohol. Then everything changed. But yeah, this movie is so stunning to look at. It does have its flaws, but I think the visual imagery and the story and the characters are so earnest, like they're so genuine and honest that you can't help but overlook the flaws.
Right.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the visuals and the songs in particular are very strong. I found the narrative a little bit weak, to be honest. The characters are good, but the way the story plays out and like the themes and elements, they don't quite connect to each other that seamlessly. And I feel like, the music does a pretty good job at masking a lot of the flaws, but at the same time, they're kind of drawn to my attention by over-dramatizing of certain situations.
Do you think it gets like overly sentimental?
I think it does, but it's only like a surface level sentimentality. It is lacking a bit of depth, which is fine. Like it doesn't have to be overly deep, but I think because the characters react in such an overly dramatic way, it makes me feel like they're kind of trying to inject a bit too much drama into it when there isn't that much drama in it. The story is fine, but the music and the visuals, they're so good.
It's pretty grandiose. Like, you have to watch it in the cinema.
It's almost too grandiose for the subject matter that they cover and the story that they're trying to tell.
There's a bit of a tonal shift, which we'll probably talk about in spoilers.
Yeah, I'll get into it a bit more in spoilers. Yeah. But that was my main impression coming out of the film, is that it looked really good and it sounded really good, but the story was a bit lacking.
I like the story a lot. I think it's just an interesting way to depict what is kind of contemporary now. There's a kind of two versions of yourself, your online persona and your real persona. But it's not done in a way that is cynical. You can see that there is the negatives of the internet. When you put yourself out there, you are going to be judged by people. You're going to get those bad comments. But I think the movie shows how good a connection can be and how versatile the net, and how the net is essentially a good invention. Because there's a lot of movies I've seen that really demonize the net as this, kind of malignant force that has made, people more introverted, significantly less attention span. It's a platform for flexers and whatnot to kind of influence a generation of young people to be like arrogant jerks. So it's really easy to kind of get lost in that. But I think in this movie, it shows how you can like kind of bring people together.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the portrayal of internet culture in general in this film. Like it can be savage. And you see that in like when Chizu first creates the persona and she starts singing, like she's just expressing herself, but there are people in the background saying, "What the hell is she doing?" Or she's got a terrible voice. Saying,
"Shut the fuck up."
But then at the same time, she gets loads of followers. So it can be like this kind of savage environment, but it can also be a positive environment. Like with internet culture, there's not really any in between. You either hate it or you love something on the internet. Like it's either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. And I think Suzu's friend kind of like puts it really well. She says when Chizu is kind of focusing a lot on the haters that she has, like that's pretty accurate as well. When you first put yourself on the internet, you're always focusing more on the negative comments than the positive comments. But Suzu's friend reminds her that it's a good thing to have both positive and negative. Like it shows that you're on a lot of people's radar. If you're only getting positive comments, then it's likely that you don't have much of a following.
I really like that character. I think Hiro is her name.
Okay, yeah.
She's like really
funny.
Smart. There's a scene where they're trying to figure out the identity of the beast. Because basically the beast kind of interrupts one of her performances. And then people are like, who the fuck is this guy? While it's all like, basically a witch hunt to get this guy. Like, hashtag who is the beast, I think,
right,
is what they showed in the show. But I guess Suzu or Belle is kind of, she's intrigued to who the beast is. Her and Hiro do a bit of like investigation. They're interviewing one of the guys, and they're just wearing like this really funny disguise with like face masks and hard hats. And it just looks really funny.
And the guy is like this like angsty artist. Right? He's like, "Who are you?"
There's a little bit of humor, and it's done well, very visually. Like there's a scene where one of the characters, Shinobu, is basically a childhood friend of Suzu, and he's kind of like enigmatic, quiet anime boy.
Yeah.
I think they hold hands at one point because he tries to grab her to get her attention, and then the school starts spreading rumors.
Right.
When they're trying to diffuse the rumors, it turns into like a mobile game app.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a very visually clever scene.
Would you say that it's, do you think it's going to be dated at some point? Or do you think everybody will see that visually and understand what it's supposed to be?
That's a good question. I think the animation style can make it timeless. Because if you look at it, it's not too much different from his other works. Watching Summer Wars, which is, I think that was 2004 when that came out, it's still quite relevant to today. It probably might date it at some point, like this will be a relic of this time. But it's like watching any movie from the early 2000s period where you see people with flip phones and whatnot.
Yeah, I guess so. Like I've said in the past, I don't really enjoy when a plot is driven by like a social media element. Like we've talked about Love Hard in the past, and I was like, and I don't know, I kind of give this movie a pass because the world of You is almost like a futuristic world. It's like,
it's basically the virtual reality world. Whatever those games are, I don't remember, like Second Life or something.
Something like that.
Yeah,
but like a much more advanced version of it. The same with Summer Wars, I guess. It's just it's not something that we already have now, and so it kind of does get a pass from me.
Yeah, for me as well, I don't really like films that are based around social media and apps, but Belle does it in a way that, as I said, it's very genuine, and I think Mamoru Hosoda has an affinity for this virtual world. I think in an interview that I read, he wanted to make films using You as a basis to tell other stories. So I'd look forward to seeing more of it. And I think he kind of has done that, because Summer Wars, I mean, I'm not sure what that virtual world is called, but it's basically You. It's almost the same. Maybe a lot less whales, but still as many anthropomorphic creatures flying around.
For both movies, I like the kind of contrast between the virtual world and the real world, because both Belle and Summer Wars, they're kind of set in these kind of quiet towns. So it's not like a cosmopolitan area. It's more like your countryside, Japanese small town vibe.
Yeah.
And that contrasts really well with the really theatrical digital world, where it's just like in giant whales and like really overpopulated with avatars, like these crazy avatars. So when they're leaping between the two, like you can clearly see where you are at any point.
You can tell in the virtual world, the animation is more akin to like the 3D cell shaded animations that you find in anime video games. So it's a lot smoother, if you notice that. Whereas like the real world,
it's kind of crisp.
It's still got that more film vibe, I think. It's still like the way that people move is at a slower frame rate, I guess. But both worlds are so visually stunning. There's just these little details. I noticed on the second viewing when she's drinking coffee from a cup, there's just like this little chip that's on the top.
Yeah.
And they didn't even need to do that, but it's just like, it just adds something to it. And especially during the, what I call the up style montage, where it's like, I'm a bit of a sucker for those. They hit me in the feels.
Right.
I watched this movie with my mate, the guy that I dragged to all these independent films. And we came up with the analogy where it's like the film, because we mentioned that, like, anime usually hits us in the feels.
Yeah.
And Mamoru Hosoda has done that a lot in his movies. So you kind of get prepared to be hit in the feels. So we came up with the analogy that, like, we're MMA fighters, like, one is just called Tavi's feels and the other one is Belle. And it's like you kind of put your guard up. But then when the up style montage comes out, it's like the leg kick that knocks me out. and then the rest of the movie, especially in the climax, is basically the armbar. And I'm like, I'm trying to tap out, but like the movie won't let go. And I'm like, So like, yeah, it hit me a lot in the feels, I reckon, this movie. And I was like, oh man.
I'd have to say I didn't get the same emotional response, I think, as you. And it's probably the contrarian in me again. But I was just too drawn to the flaws, I guess.
Narrative flaws.
Yeah, just because I also was very aware of what the intent of the film was, I guess. I was keenly aware that, they're trying to get an emotional response from me. So I think maybe my guard was a bit too up. But yeah, like, just didn't quite hit home for me.
But sometimes you just gotta let yourself go. Just let yourself feel something.
That's true.
You don't need to be contrarian all the time.
To be fair, I usually don't have that problem. But yeah, for some reason or whatever, this film, I didn't feel as much from it as I probably should have. What do you think about the Beauty and the Beast parallel?
Yeah, I said it's a pretty interesting way to update a story. It's definitely a Beauty and the Beast parallel, but I think Mamoru Hosoda makes it his own because it has all of his elements. And I think there is a subversion of the story because there are a couple of red herrings that he's put in.
Right, a lot of the mystery is who is this Beast character? Like, not just for the characters in the film, but for us as the audience. Like, we want to know who this Beast character is. Because it probably is somebody that she knows or has encountered throughout the film.
I think when you find out who the Beast is, it's admittedly a bit random. It's not connected to really anyone she knows. I guess this is a spoiler, but like, I feel that the randomness is fine because, like, not everything is always going to be connected to you. Like, it's not going to tie in comfortably as a movie is, When I watched it again, there's scenes where they show a character saying who the Beast is right in your face. I guess it's kind of like Fight Club syndrome, where you know the twists and you can kind of see all the hints and clues. I think I liked that. I guess it's not really a twist, but it's an unexpected reveal because Beauty and the Beast is essentially a love story, and they kind of lead the way with this kind of witch hunt that happens. There's what they call the Justice Crew or something. I was going to say the Justice League, but
I did enjoy that character, Justian. I like when he appears and all his sponsors are like behind him. That's pretty fun.
Do you think? I'm not sure. This probably wasn't intended by Mamoru Hosoda, but it's something like a parallel that I noticed. Whether we talk about companies who kind of, I guess, virtual signal for the sake of the company, not really being genuine. Like, do you think there is some connection to that, like with internet culture and maybe even today? It's so easy to go on a witch hunt for someone who on the surface appears pretty frightening and so different from us. What I see the Beast character is someone who it's hard to talk about it without
maybe we'll come back to it.
I'll go back to that point. But there was a metaphor that I got from that was probably not intended, by Mamoru Hosoda. But yeah.
Yeah, going back to the Beauty and the Beast parallel, I guess it was another one of those things where I thought it looked really good, but I didn't feel like it had any bearing to the story or any kind of connection to the story. The original story of Beauty and the Beast, you know, it is this love story. And it is kind of about, it's a story about loving someone despite their flaws, I guess, is the main message of the original Beauty and the Beast. Whereas this one, it's not really about that at all. So like the connection between the two is purely aesthetic. So I feel like it was just a motif that looked good rather than a well thought out.
Well, I think, again, I need to go into spoilers to talk about the reason why I think the motif is good. I think society tends to want to revere in what the beauty is, whereas we tend to ignore the beast, I guess. And what the beast is a representation of is kind of someone who is asking for help and is suffering, but people don't want to like deal with that shit. People just want to see Belle. And the thing is, like, there's nothing wrong with like focusing on the beautiful aspects, because Belle is a positive influence on people.
Right.
And people probably see, you know, they judge Belle as maybe as a beast as well, because again, positive and negative, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I think using Beauty and the Beast as kind of that subversion of the love story to tell these two different aspects of humans, you know.
Like dealing with trauma, I guess?
Yeah. The story is dealing with trauma. Story about kind of recovering from your trauma and accepting your trauma. And I think using the familiar Beauty and the Beast story kind of things, you would expect this love story, but you are actually being greeted with something else, which I think I really like that.
I mean, there's subversion of expectation, but there's also like, did they just do it for the sake of wanting to do Beauty and the Beast, you know?
I mean, you never know, because maybe that's what he wanted to do.
It just didn't seem like a conscious decision to me. It seemed like something that looked good on paper. That's just my take on it anyway. I think some of it had to do with like what I said before about it being a bit overly dramatic for its own good. There are parts in the digital world that kind of made me chuckle thinking about how they would translate into the real world. You know the South Park episode about World of Warcraft?
Yeah.
So there are parts like in the virtual world where the Beast and Belle are kind of having this really dramatic moment, and he's like turning away from her and he's crippled over in pain and his bruises are appearing on his back and he's going, It kind of reminded me of like when Randy gets stabbed in the World of Warcraft. And then he's like in the game, he's like, take this, Stan. And then it cuts to him at his like work cubicle. And he's doing this. So that kind of stuff.
You kind of have to not think about, because I kind of did think about that a little bit. What are they doing in the real world at the same time when this dramatic stuff happens? And I think Mamoru Hosoda was probably thinking like, let's not worry about that. Let's just worry about what I want the audience to feel at this point.
For sure.
They might have written a scene or animated or done some storyboards, but it probably would have just looked silly, like to watch like Chizu like on the ground, like writhing in pain or whatever. It just would have looked dumb.
I don't know. Maybe it was a bit too much for me. It was a bit too sentimental and too dramatic, especially when you kind of contrast it with what's actually happening in the real world. Because at the end of the day, they're just normal people, really. Chizu is this like superstar in the virtual world, but in the real world, she's just an everyday girl, and she reacts to things like in not really that dramatic fashion. Whereas when she's Belle, she's kind of turned into this princess that overreacts to every kind of situation in the virtual world. I mean, the climax aside, the climax is well done, I think. It does a good job at kind of portraying her inner feelings and bringing them to the surface. But I don't know. I wasn't sold on everything preceding that.
I see Belle and the Beast and the virtual world almost as their own characters. And I think that's almost kind of what makes...
I mean, that would be fine, but again, I don't really want to get into spoilers yet, but the Beast and his real-world counterpart are fairly similar in terms of the way they act, whereas Belle and Chizu are almost completely different. It just felt like it didn't quite stick it. And yeah, we'll probably be able to talk more about it in spoilers.
I mean, should we just get into spoilers?
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's a bad film. I do think like it is just a joy to watch. And had I gone into it maybe with like in a different mood, maybe a mood that was a bit more open to just going with the emotional flow of it, I might have enjoyed it a lot more. But even still, like even taking away all that, it was just really good. Like the songs are really good. The visuals are amazing. And yeah, it's definitely an improvement on Summer Wars.
No, I really like this movie. I think it had more of an emotional impact on me. I like the themes in this movie. I think the story is pretty strong. I know that the movie has its flaws, but I think with just its cinematicness. And again, just the vision is just so strong. I can forgive it for that. It's kind of what when I would watch a movie, like, I don't know, Free Guy, for example. Like, I'm comparing those two movies quickly. I see Free Guy as this very bland, maybe more tightly written script, but it just didn't feel like anything to me. Whereas this movie may have had, you know, a couple of underdeveloped characters. Maybe not everything has connected as well, but I think our lives don't really connect like that. But I think if you can search for it, I think there is something to kind of connect. But yeah, I think it's just a very good film. Yeah.
All right, shall we talk spoilers?
So basically, Suzu's trauma is that she lost her mother when she was young, in that Up style montage where you see her as a kid, you know, playing with her parents in her house. She's learning music.
Yeah.
And then I think it's like storming. There's a typhoon and her mother chooses to save this child that's like on an island.
Yeah.
And she basically dies in the process of saving the child. Suzu feels alone. She loses the ability to sing because I think she's part of like a choir or something.
Yeah.
And she just, you know, has usual anxiety. But then, yeah, she's introduced to the virtual world where she creates Belle. Well, the program kind of creates it for her. It's based on some biometric thing.
But then she's able to find her voice again within this virtual world. And she starts singing and that causes her to become an online sensation almost overnight.
And then there's the Beast. So the Beast is, you think it's going to be Shinobu. I think was the purpose of his character. Because you know it's not going to be the three suspects that they originally introduced, like the angsty artist, the baseball dude, and the whiny house mom.
Yeah.
But like Shinobu seems to...
Yeah, he's kind of there. You know he's going to play some part in the story, so you kind of assume that the rest of them are red herrings and he's going to be the one, but then he himself turns out to be a red herring.
And you think there's one of the other side characters is Ruka.
Yeah.
You think because she's kind of like this really bright classroom president, she's really talented, and you think she's going to be that character who is like super fake, but is actually a major bitch in real life.
Sure.
But no, she's actually just a good person.
Yeah, because she kind of has some interactions with Shinobu. Is that his name?
Yeah,
Shinobu. So you might be thinking like, oh, she's out to steal her her man kind of thing.
Yeah, like,
but yeah, she just turns out to be a nice person who is interested in someone else. Another character who is quite fun, Chikami.
The canoe guy. Yeah, he's kind of just there as like kind of a comic gag.
Yeah.
I think with these characters, like you could say that these characters are underdeveloped, which they may be, but I think they're there to kind of throw you off to who the Beast is.
I didn't feel like they needed to be overly developed. Like I think the interactions between them in the real world are quite good. I especially enjoyed Chikami and Ruka's interactions. I thought that was very cute.
The scene where they're at the train station.
Yeah, it's
because
great.
Ruka has just admitted that she actually likes Chikami, because Chikami is kind of depicted as a little bit of a loser, I guess.
Yeah,
but
a bit
he's
clueless.
just like, he's just very like headstrong in what he wants to do. And then she she kind of admits her feeling to him, and then he's just very stunned. And it's just a great piece of like animated comedy, I guess. Yeah, it's another one of the humorous scenes, and something that you could probably really only pull off in anime with just the expressions and the movements of the characters.
See, those kinds of moments I tended to enjoy a lot more than the overly dramatic moments set in the virtual world. And even in the real world towards the end, there were some pretty dramatic moments that kind of fell flat for me. But yeah, like those simple interactions I really enjoyed. The character of Shinobu was kind of an odd one because, like you said, he's kind of there to subvert expectations. But at the same time, he does have quite a role to play in Suzu's journey. He's presented as this character that kind of is looking after Suzu, and it's kind of hinted that she might have feelings for him, but at the same time, not really. By
the end of the movie, you still don't really know. It's left open.
Yeah.
A lot of Asian movies tend to leave a lot of things unresolved, which I don't mind. I think I've gotten used to that. And I think whether it's resolved or not, it doesn't really matter, because I think the main story arc is resolved.
Yeah, I don't mind ambiguity when I feel that it's intentional. But somehow I felt like this might not have been fully intentional. But yeah, because he also is the cause of Suzu at the end using her own voice and her own self to sing in the virtual world. He convinces her to not sing as Belle, but sing as Suzu, which for a character that is kind of in the background, that's a pretty big part to play.
Yeah. Even though I do really like that particular message, it kind of dismisses Belle as a character, if you know what I mean. Because I think Belle could be her own character. It's interesting because it's basically Suzu's virtual persona. She kind of has a life of her own, which is why you can kind of get those over dramatic scenes where the beast is going, and then you kind of forget that Belle is Suzu, I guess. It's kind of dismissing the virtual world a little bit as just a virtual world.
It would have been better if Suzu and Belle had kind of merged or something.
They sort of tried to do that when Belle is riding the giant whale full of speakers. They kind of intercutting. It wasn't as well communicated, even though it's the most visually stunning scene of the movie. Basically, the big reveal of the beast is, during their investigation, they come across these two boys who had lost their mother. Suzu has an immediate connection at that point. And it's also a scene where the younger brother literally says, the dragon is my hero, which is he's literally saying who the beast is, which is his older brother.
It's not communicated that strongly on first viewing.
Yeah.
Because they are kind of fleeting, these interactions between them. They're kind of in the middle of a montage of characters telling the camera what they're feeling about this dragon character. The beast character. Yeah, the reveal is that, the older brother is the beast.
Yeah, they're both victims of domestic violence from their father. Yeah, which I did not see coming. I was just oh shit, this is kind of dark. I didn't expect that angle, because usually it's the bruises are always a metaphor for emotional pain. Or in this movie, it's both emotional and physical. Once she finds out who the beast is, she tries to convince, I guess, the beast character that she really is Belle, in the real world. And that's when Shinobu says, you should sing as yourself. Because basically in you, I think the stakes is being doxxed. So the guy's got this massive doxed gun that kind of reveals who you are. Actually, I think about it now, it's kind of an odd stake, because being doxed has severe consequences, but it's also it's not really that life-threatening as well. It's I'm going to reveal who you are.
I think in the context of the narrative, it works because they do place a lot of value in their online personas. Well, Suzu / Belle does anyway. And you can kind of only assume that everybody else in the virtual world does, even though the Beast doesn't really say as much. Because Suzu feels so strongly that she doesn't want to be outed as Belle, like, she just wants Belle to be kind of a secret way for her to express herself online. Yeah, the stakes are quite high, I think.
Yeah. I think
but you're right, in like our world, in mine and your world, we don't really care if people see our faces. Right?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, people might like swat us or send pizzas to our house.
Even though
that's what's at stake.
We ourselves, we do use avatars rather than showing our faces. I mean, that's kind of a personal preference. Maybe not to the same, the stakes aren't of the same level as they are portrayed in Belle, but it's still there.
I mean, do you reckon we're just the Beast and the Beast in real life as well? I wanted to bring it back to the point that I was making earlier about the Beauty and the Beast parallel. Yeah, just the metaphors of like people who focus on beauty and then like tending to ignore or even just kind of like make fun of the Beast, because when the Beast is revealed and then there's like the display of domestic violence, there's like these 3 online users who like pop in the chat room and say like, oh, is it domestic violence? Like, should someone just call the police? And they just laugh it off. And these are just like trolls. But like most people who will see this kind of thing tends to get shut down, especially like this kind of heavier stuff. Like, I know on YouTube there are a lot of people who cover these kind of themes. YouTube tends to censor them, whether it's done in an earnest way where people are actually trying to educate, because YouTube doesn't like these themes at all. I mean, I'd be surprised if YouTube was going to censor us, because we usually keep things pretty light, but we will get into some more like philosophical or heavier topics.
I mean, I think it's probably not the internet. It's more like society. We do tend to prefer to keep things light in general, especially in our entertainment media. So I think that's kind of portrayed in the general reaction to the introduction of the Beast character. So like all the users are pretty much hate him.
I said before, they're like basically starting a witch hunt. Like, where is this guy? Who is this dude? I bet you he's like a massive prick.
They're like, we want to listen to Belle's concert. Why is this guy kind of ruining our fun by being angsty, I guess?
What was the quote from Old Boy? If you laugh, the world laughs with you.
If you cry, you cry alone.
If you cry alone, yeah. And I think that statement holds very true. Even like when you are in your dark times, you can rely on your close friends to maybe help you out and listen to you, but no one wants to be around like a moper, And you were saying before, like with people choosing to choose the entertainment that they want to consume, most of it is going to be light. I guess if I was going to talk about the type of films that I watch, I pretty regularly watch heavier stuff, and I'm always imploring people to watch films that are a bit more complicated rather than just choosing to watch
Free Guy,
Fast 9. But like I also don't blame people for wanting to, because like it's hard to confront that,
particularly like when it comes to the online or virtual world. Like for Suzu, this online world was an escape. So you can only imagine that for most of the users, this online world is probably an escape from their real world problems. For them to try to escape their real world problems only to be confronted by another, somebody else's angst and somebody else's problems. Like, it's not, it's probably something you'd rather avoid.
You kind of want to quell it. You almost don't want it to exist. You kind of refuse its existence. But I think just having a beast is part of us, It's like the Carl Jung theory of the shadow. Like, you boys got that shadow side that has these immoral thoughts or has the darker side of yourself. I think confronting that, or even coming to terms with that, which is what they kind of do, they kind of come to terms with their trauma, both Suzu and the Beast. in this film.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if it tracks 100% because Suzu's trauma stems from kind of her mum's passing, right? Like, it's established pretty early on that the reason she likes singing is because of her mum, and the reason she stopped singing is because of her mum's death. But then the reason she starts singing again isn't really connected in any way to her mum. So, like, for me, it doesn't quite come full circle. It doesn't fall that neatly. But like you said, it doesn't always have to fall neatly.
Well, I think it does kind of connect because she kind of asks, why did her mum just choose to save this random kid, you know? And I think when she finds out who the beast is, even though technically they have developed a relationship, but
he is still a
that
random
is through
kid.
that's just through their avatars. He is just some random kid.
Yeah.
During the climax, or when she chooses to go and rescue him, she kind of realizes, you know, this is what...
Yeah, she has a text conversation with her dad saying that she's very much like her mother or whatever. But I don't know, it felt a little bit shoehorned in. I feel like maybe if they had made that decision a bit clearer, like her decision to go help Kay, it seemed like just an instinctive reaction rather than a conscious decision. And I guess that's trying to parallel with her mum's instinctive reaction to save the child, but it isn't clearly communicated, I think. To me, it just felt like things were flowing in that direction anyway. Of course, she's going to go try to save Kay and his brother. And then afterwards, they tried to connect it with that text communication from her dad, which as well I felt was a bit lazy and shoehorned in.
I don't know. I feel like I got it when I was watching it.
Seems like a conversation that shouldn't have been conducted through text, maybe. Like a lot of the time I was thinking, is her dad okay?
Yeah, they don't really show very much of him.
Her dad appears here and there, and he is dealing with the same trauma as she is because, you know, it's his wife that's died. And she kind of says, you know, me and my dad, we don't talk that much. But he tries to talk to her a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And she just shuts him out.
She kind of shuts him out. Yeah.
So, like, I thought that maybe the beast was going to turn out to be her dad. And they were kind of dealing with the same trauma, but in different ways. And then that way, you know, they could have made that connection between them, like, familial rather than romantic. And it would also explain why she was drawn so strongly to the Beast character, because, you know, she would recognize the Beast's pain as similar to her own. The reveal, it's fine that it wasn't Shinobu, but I don't know, it felt a bit underwhelming still. How did you feel about the reveal of the Beast as Kay?
No, I was pretty surprised because I was expecting it to be Shinobu.
Oh, okay.
And I think when it was revealed, the domestic violence theme kind of like shocked me a bit because I wasn't expecting it. This is a PG-rated film, and I can't remember if Mamoru Hosoda's really explored anything that heavy because his movies are usually very sentimental, kind of fantastical. But I think it is quite shocking that he kind of used that theme because, again, it's pretty heavy. And I think it added to that metaphor that I talk about people not wanting to kind of acknowledge that this exists or choose to confront it.
Right.
So, but I think that's kind of my own interpretation. Like when you make movies, you always have you've always got your own message in your mind, but then when people will watch or read your stuff, they will have their own interpretation that you didn't think of at all. But you kind of go with it. Sometimes, like, I've had people read stuff and say, oh, yeah, I thought this and this. And then for me, like, I didn't think of it at all. But I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah, sort of. I think it just shows maybe the subconscious and it kind of bleeds into your work. So I think it is kind of an exploration into what he might be thinking into his subconscious, you know. Maybe like all the shit that I've said, he's probably like, that's like not what I thought at all. Maybe if he chooses to listen to this podcast, maybe he is thinking, oh yeah, shit, I fucked up a lot of the stuff, a lot of it. But yeah, I think you know, everyone's just going to kind of draw their own interpretation.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Hosoda a bit. He's a good director.
Yeah.
But he does have some beef with Hayao Miyazaki.
Oh, does he?
He criticizes Miyazaki's portrayal of female characters. I'll read a quote from an interview. He says, "I will not name him, but there is a great master of animation who always takes a young woman as his heroine. And to be frank, I think he does it because he does not have confidence in himself as a man. This veneration of young women really disturbs me, and I do not want to be a part of it." So I guess his main issue is with Miyazaki's depiction of women and him putting them on a pedestal. So Hosoda tries to avoid this trope, because it's not just Miyazaki's work, but he says it's a criticism of his with anime in general. Like it annoys him to see how young women are often seen in Japanese animation, like treated as sacred and not real, I guess. What do you think about Suzu's character?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I have read some people who put like, say, oh, this movie is a bit of a feminist spin, which I didn't really see at all.
Belle, you mean?
Yeah, Belle. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Because I kind of see Miyazaki and Mamoru Hosoda portray women in like the same manner. So I feel like maybe what Hosoda said then is probably a little bit full of shit, I think, because he portrays women a lot in his films.
It's probably a bit of a grudge there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, taking away the Miyazaki aspect of it, yeah, I guess it is a trope of anime to kind of put women on a pedestal. Maybe not in Miyazaki's works specifically, but in general.
But I don't look at it as just like, you know, I'm not watching either of these animes because, you know, I want to see women get put on a pedestal. I want to see like good, relatable characters. And I think that's the thing about Miyazaki and Hosoda. They've got these characters that I have basically nothing in common with. Like I'm not Japanese, I'm not a girl, but there are aspects of them that I can relate to. So I don't choose to see these characters through their gender. I just like them as characters, you know. They feel like actual people. I'm just trying to think of the Miyazaki films and Hosoda films that I've seen that have these female characters, and I don't think about them being put on a pedestal. I just think I just like this character because they're good to watch, and I can relate to their struggle. Yeah,
pretty well rounded. Like they do have flaws as well. I think the character of Suzu in general is pretty relatable, like kind of introverted in real life, but able to express herself on an online forum is something that, you know, a lot of people, maybe particularly young people, can relate to.
Suzu is not the most original character. I think I've seen this character in other films, but she's still someone that I can relate to, you know, wanting just the idea of like different personas. And it's not even just the virtual world. I think it's the personas that we choose to show to other people. This is explored a lot in this is taking a bit of a left turn here in a lot of in Charlie Kaufman films, who is like my premium screenwriter. He's basically the dude that made me want to become a writer. You'd think it'd be like some Asian guy with all the Asian movies that I watch, but it's actually Charlie Kaufman who I really strike a connection with. He deals a lot with these kind of, you know, multiple identities, but I won't get into too much of this stuff. But like, yeah, I think just you can have all these personas in your life, and I think with Belle, you kind of explore that with Suzu and Belle, which is why I almost see them as two different characters.
Like the character herself, Suzu, is really good. Her journey as well is okay. I don't know. I think the fact that it's Shinobu as well that kind of convinces her to reveal herself, it's somewhat random of a choice. And I think maybe some of the choices felt a bit too random for me, that it didn't feel as fluid as it could have been. Like the reveal of Kay as well as being the beast, it felt a little bit random. It felt like a subversion for the sake of subversion's sake. Yeah, I guess her journey in general was pretty relatable. Like the message, I guess, is just be yourself. Is that is that what it is?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. Like
if we had to dumb it down,
but be yourself.
How about Kei's journey though? Like, he is obviously being abused by his dad. He's trying to protect his brother from this abuse. So he creates this beast persona to maybe vent some of the rage that he's feeling, I guess.
Well, I think I'm not an expert on this because I'm not a psychologist, but I think people choose to create these personas on the net to kind of ask for help, even though they're pushing people away. Because Kei has his speeches like, you people are kind of, in a nutshell, saying like, you people just enjoy watching us get beat up. We don't need you. But I think, again, subconsciously, you putting yourself on the net is kind of
a cry for help.
But like, you know, it's like when you kind of see a cornered dog, it's kind of there. It's like it wants help.
But if like, you try to help it, it'll bite you.
Yeah. There's a song that it kind of reminds me of by this band called The Hotelier. I think it's called, what was it? Housebound. And it's basically about, it's told from a perspective of a dog who just keeps barking at people whenever it tries to get close. And I think the metaphor of the song is basically, as we've just said, like, you kind of like want help, but you will just consistently push people away. And you don't really know that you're doing it. Like, you don't really know that you're asking for help, but you kind of are.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So I guess his journey is that he finally learns to accept help. Is that...
Yeah, I think so. Then again, yeah, I could be wrong. Like Hosoda, I'm like, nah, that's wrong, man. It's all about Chizu being a goddess, apparently. So, like, putting women on a pedestal. Yeah, maybe we can wrap this one up soon. It seems like we can have a fucking thesis from this episode.
There's a lot to unpack, I think, in this film.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, to me personally, some of it feels less intentional than maybe I would have liked. But that said, there's a lot to read into, and I think that is a major strength of the film. You know, when things are left to the audience to kind of interpret for themselves.
Yeah, I think this has been our most philosophical episode. We've talked a lot of, I'm sure our listeners would appreciate that from a podcast with two avatars based on Totoro and Saitama. You know, but no, I think this is the reason why I really like this movie, is because you can have quite a conversation about it, and whether or not I'm seeing more from it than it was intended. I think that's the power of this movie. I still hold it to a pretty high degree. It will probably end up being one of my favorite movies of the year, with just how visually stunning it is. I think if a movie makes me think, like what we were talking about in this episode, I think it's a good movie. Maybe as a form of entertainment and a narrative, it has its flaws, as you pointed out. And yeah, like, you know, some of it I agree with, some of it I don't. But I think just as kind of like a text, I think it's a marvelous piece of cinema that should be watched and discussed, especially with the packed theater that I was in.
How many people?
The first time was just me and my friend. We were the only people in the cinema. And then the second time was me, and then I think there was these two other teenage Asian girls. And they seemed pretty excited as well, so it was good to see. It was good to hear some of their reactions to some of the more emotional scenes in the movie. But yeah, no, I like it, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my final thought.
That's just COVID, though. I'm sure it'll get its a second life on streaming. And it's very relevant as well, I think, to today's
I think
society.
I also think the area that I watched it in is not the most anime savvy area. I'm sure at Cinema Nova it probably had like packed sessions because Hosoda is a pretty big name. He's up there with like Makoto, Shinkai, Miyazaki, I guess. You know, they're kind of the three big names in anime films.
Yeah, no, it's a good watch. But what did you guys think of it? Did you like Belle, what part of it did you enjoy? The visuals, the songs, the story, or all of it? Did you have a different interpretation than Tavi and I on the events that unfolded throughout the film? Let us know. You can contact us at 2asianblokes@gmail.com, or you can join our Facebook group to be part of the conversation. Thank you as always for listening to us.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye-bye.